In this video, you're going to learn about the circulatory system. Make sure you're filling out notes as you watch this video. The circulatory system has a lot of important things to know and is sometimes one of the harder systems to memorize. In this video, there are also going to be checking yourself questions. These check yourself questions are more difficult than in other videos, so make sure if you don't understand something, you either ask someone at your table or you raise your hand and ask me before moving on. Before we get into the circulatory system, first we're going to talk a little bit about anatomy in general and how your systems connect. Think back to our study of cell biology. We talked about cellular respiration. If you remember, cellular respiration is the process that animals use to make their energy. We talked about how energy is also called ATP, and that it's really important to power all types of life. Recall the equation for cellular respiration. It was glucose, or sugar, that we get from food, plus oxygen, and what we give off is carbon dioxide, water, and then we get energy. But how do glucose and oxygen get to your cells if, let's say, they're both going in through your mouth, and your cells are all over your body, and what takes the carbon, water, and other waste away? This last question is what we're going to answer through the circulatory system. So again, today we're talking about the circulatory system. So let's start by talking about what the circulatory system is. The circulatory system is a system that carries blood and dissolves substances, like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, to and from places in your body. It's also sometimes referred to as the cardiovascular system. For the purpose of this class, we'll probably refer to it mostly as the circulatory system, but if it helps you remember, cardio means heart. Second thing we need to talk about is where do the nutrients in your blood come from? So if the circulatory system moves blood and nutrients, where are we getting those things from? Well, as we talked about in digestion, we get our nutrients from our digestive system, and specifically, nutrients get absorbed through the villi in your small intestines. And remember, the villi were those little circle finger-shaped things that lined your small intestine, and it's where nutrients get absorbed. The last thing we need to talk about is what is the function. So the function of the circulatory system is it's bringing oxygen and nutrients to your body cells, and then it takes away all the waste that your body makes through things like cellular respiration. If you were to look at a picture that kind of overviews the circulatory system, it might look something like this. The circulatory system is going all over your body, so it's a little more complicated than some other systems. You'll notice in this video that the left side of the circulatory system is blue, and the right side is red. Why is that the case? Basically, the colors of the circulatory system depend on whether or not oxygen is in the blood or not. When blood has no oxygen in it, it takes on a much darker color. It kind of looks like a blue. If you look at your wrist now, you might even be able to see some of the blue veins and arteries close to your skin. That means that blood traveling through those veins and arteries has no oxygen in it. As soon as oxygen hits blood, it becomes bright red. So that's why when you cut yourself, you always see red blood. Because as soon as the skin is broken, your oxygen is getting to the blood, and it turns red. Sometimes looking at that previous diagram can be a little confusing though. How does it fit on our actual bodies? Well, if you were to put it on our bodies, your heart is in the center of your body, around your upper chest. And then your veins and arteries run all the way from your head to your feet. Your lungs are going to be on the left and right side of your heart, and we'll talk about them more later. One important thing that people generally get wrong is your heart is not located on the left side of your body. It's actually located in the center of your body. But the way your heart is shaped, it's bigger on the left side. And so it hangs over more to the left, which is why people generally put their hands over their hearts to the left side of their body if they're doing some sort of pledge. Looking at your heart, you can divide it into basically 4 chambers. The top 2 are called atria. The bottom 2 chambers are called ventricles. It's important not to mess up the names of these 4 chambers. So you have 2 atria on top, 2 ventricles on the bottom. Then you have veins and arteries that come out of your heart, and something called coronary arteries, which are these arteries, and basically their job is to supply blood directly to your heart. So your heart itself is getting blood. Now let's look inside the heart. Looking at the inside of the heart looks very similar to looking on the outside, as far as the veins and arteries present. If you look at the aorta, again, that is the biggest artery in your body that's taking blood away from your heart. It's taking it to the rest of the body. The pulmonary artery doesn't have to take blood as far. It goes to the lungs. Now you'll notice the pulmonary artery is covered with blue because it's holding deoxygenated blood, or blood with no oxygen in it. It's going to travel to the lungs, and when it comes back, it should have picked up oxygen. You'll also notice you have the pulmonary vein. That is the vein that's coming back from the lungs. So like I just said, if blood has traveled to the lungs, then it probably went there for the purpose of picking up oxygen, and now it should be a bright red color, traveling back into the heart. Now that you've talked about the different parts of the heart, we're going to answer a check yourself question. Check yourself. For this question, it might be a little difficult. So make sure if you don't know the answer, you ask either me or someone at your table. Your aorta and pulmonary arteries are the 2 major arteries that leave your heart. Your aorta leaves through the left side of your heart, and the pulmonary artery leaves through the right side. Based off your understanding of the heart and circulatory functions, why does it make sense that your aorta is so much larger than your pulmonary artery? Make sure you write down your answer to this question. Next, we're going to talk about the 3 types of blood vessels. There's arteries, veins, and capillaries. On the next couple slides, we'll go into details about each. The most important thing to know about arteries is arteries carry blood away from the heart. Think arteries away. They are elastic, which allows them to stretch under pressure so they can push blood along as they go. Veins, on the other hand, carry blood towards the heart, or you can think veins go into the heart. Veins can have thinner walls than arteries because they don't have to push quite as much. And lastly, you have capillaries. Capillaries are the tiny, tiny blood cells in your body, and they link or connect arteries and veins. These are found in your lungs and allow for oxygen to get in and out of your blood. These are found in your villi and allow for nutrients to get in and out of your digestive system. And these are also found in a system we haven't talked about at all yet, which is the excretory system. The most important thing to know for capillaries is that because their walls are so thin, that's what allows molecules to move into and out of them. Nothing can get into an artery. Nothing can get into a vein. Capillaries is where all type of exchange happens. Try these 3 check yourself questions. These answers can be found directly in the video. So make sure if you don't know them, you go back to the time between the first check yourself and this one. The information should be there. So now that we've looked at the big picture of the circulatory system, we're going to look at how the heart works. Recall from earlier that the top 2 chambers of the heart are called atrium. Step 1 of blood flowing through your heart is that the heartbeat begins when the heart muscles relax and blood is able to flow into the atria. It might be flowing from the lungs, in which case that blood is red, or it might be flowing from the body, where it dumped its oxygen to your body cells. Either way, when that first heartbeat starts, that's when blood enters the heart from those 2 locations. Step 2 is that the atria contracts. Remember that your heart is made of cardiac muscle, and contracting is when the walls of the muscle push inward. So your atria contracts, and it squeezes the blood into the ventricle, or the lower parts of the heart. Finally, a couple things happen. These little things called valves close. That prevents blood from moving back up into the atria. Then once those are closed, the ventricles are free to contract or push inward, which squeezes blood out through different arteries. While this is happening, the atria are now relaxed, not contracted, and can fill up with blood again, and the process can happen all over again. Try this check yourself question. Again, it's a little more complicated than some you've done before. Stenosis is caused when a heart valve does not fully open. Symptoms of this disorder can be tightness of the chest, dizziness, fatigue, and heart palpitations, which basically feels like your heart's beating fast. Take a second to explain why stenosis could lead to these symptoms. If it helps, you can go back to the 3 steps you just covered. Last thing we're going to cover is basically what blood is. Everyone has probably seen blood before, but you might not know all the things that are in it. Blood is made up of red blood cells, which we'll talk about in a second, nutrients from digested food, white blood cells, waste in the form of urea, which eventually goes into your urine, something called platelets, hormones, something called plasma, which is just a liquid, carbon dioxide, and oxygen. So there's a lot in your blood. Red blood cells can be described as looking disc-like. They're the only type of cell in your body without a nucleus. They contain a molecule called hemoglobin, which is just something that's able to hold oxygen and carry it to the cells until it's needed. And they're able to change shape, which helps when they're being squeezed through tiny capillaries. Last, check yourself. Answer these 2 questions in your notes. If you can't answer them, go back through the video. At this point, you should have a pretty good sense of the circulatory system, its major functions, why it's important, what it does. You should understand the heart, both structurally, so what are the different parts of it, and how it functions. And you should have some idea of how the digestive system is connected to the circulatory system.